29. And to begin with a major story of the day, I'm so pleased to be joined here on the anchor desk by the former Chief of Staff to Congressman Walter B. Jones of North Carolina, my friend Glen Downs. Glen, great to have you back here.
Great to be here.
We are talking about a story, ironically, and maybe viewers don't know this, it's worth repeating. We're North Carolinians, as is the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch.
Correct.
You're from Greensboro. I grew up in High Point. Loretta Lynch lived in Greensboro, moved to Durham for her high school years, and we look at North Carolina's largest city, and we see what happened last night. Miranda recounted in the wake of a police incident involving the fatality of an African American, a shooting. It was a night of unrest. Now, you see the crowds, and Charlotte is the largest city in the Carolinas, but it's a very different scene from what we saw, for example, in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri. For example, there's an African-American police chief.
Correct.
The officer who shot the man is also African-American, as was obviously the man, the victim, or the man who was shot. I don't know that he's a victim. The point is that it seems what is carrying the day is an emotional soundbite of a woman insisting the man didn't have the gun, yet the cops say he had a gun. And you look back at Ferguson, and you look back at some other stories, and it's as if the left puts forward a narrative that is widely accepted in the journalistic community. Suddenly that becomes the template of the story, and when the facts prove otherwise, about a week later, it is too late to dissuade the, quote, new facts that have taken hold in the popular imagination.
Yeah, you can't unring the bell is the problem. And, you know, there are legitimate complaints, I think everyone acknowledges, that some African Americans have about being stopped driving while black, that sort of thing. But on the other hand, now you have situations that's bled over to a situation like this where you have a city that's frankly is controlled by, they have partisan city council elections here in Charlotte, North Carolina, controlled by Democrats. You got as you indicated, the black police chief, black officer shooting a African-American black man, and the heat is exceeding the light, and you have this kind of a reaction. So it tells you all was not well leading up to this. It wasn't like everything was just hunky-dory in terms of the underlying social situation, and this was a fuse that lit something that was ready to go anyway, probably.
Add to that, sadly, and there's no way to separate the political dynamic.
Right.
North Carolina, one of the critical states to both campaigns.
Right.
North Carolina, where a whole lot has gone on in terms of the bathroom bill that started with an ordinance in Charlotte before the General Assembly took that up. But part of the reaction last night, is it general outrage, genuine outrage in the community, or is this something being manipulated by outside forces?
I don't think there's any question that people are using an underlying situation that might exist, whether grievances are justified or unjustified. They use real grievances, justified or unjustified grievances, and then instead of trying to lower the temperature, in fact, throw gasoline on it, ignite a fire. And there are people that are trying to do things for example, I think a person could be reasonably suspicious that there is some concern amongst the left that African-American voters are not sufficiently motivated to turn out and vote for, say, Mrs. Clinton and or to stop Donald Trump.
Well, let's stop right there, because calls are coming in at 1-877-Newsmax, 1-877-639-7629. One of the calls from a self-described African-American supporter of Donald Trump. I believe it is Trenton who is on the line from Buffalo, New York. Trenton, welcome to America Talks Live.
Hey, glad to be here. Finally got a chance to call again. And, you know, we've been a Republican family our whole lives, African-American family. And, you know, my mother taught me very early, don't trust the Democrats. They're going to just use us as votes. And I didn't really get into it until I got older and went to college. And I've seen how things were actually done. And I watched the media. And they talk about Donald Trump like he's a racist, but he wasn't a racist when he was on The Apprentice. He wasn't a racist when he was in the primaries. All of a sudden he's a racist. And that's what the Democrats use. And it sickens me that the Democrats use the African Americans who live in these slums that I grew up in, and my mother, thank God, got me out. they have these slums, and the African Americans are so undereducated when it comes to politics. I could talk to some in the street. Actually, last week, they had no clue what was going on. Trump's an idiot. I said, can you elaborate? They couldn't elaborate. I said, let me tell you something. How come the Democrats come every 4 years, get your votes? Once you get them in, you're still living in a slum. And they can't answer those questions. And
well, let me ask you something more about that, Trenton, and then I want to get to what happened last night in Charlotte. But I am interested in the interaction with your neighbors. Just anecdotally, you talked about that one encounter last week, but are you finding any other African Americans who confide in you that, yes, they're going to vote for Donald Trump?
Here's the problem you have, and as an African American, I tell you, most of my friends are white. I do have black friends. I'm actually a scout, so I'm in the inner city a lot. And I'm going to tell you this right now. There is a long history of uninformed African Americans in the inner cities who have no idea. They don't sit and watch the news like me. They don't follow politics. And the word racism, all the Democrats have to do is say that one time and they'll get their vote. It's almost sickening, and it's amazing that it goes on for so long. And I hope when the older African Americans who the Democrats put on TV to do the race mongering and all that, when they die off, hopefully there's a new generation of African Americans like myself who come up and understand that we're being played. The problem is, in the inner cities, it's so liberal, and it's crazy. And they don't see, they pretty much blame us Democrats for their troubles when, if you look at it, I told one guy, look, do you know your history? Do you know the Democrats pretty much led the KKK and everything else? Look at your history and find out we didn't do any of this to you. It's a mind game, and the mind game is pretty strong, and it's going to be tough to break. Donald Trump has more than 1% of African-American votes. I can tell you that right now.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned that, and empirically, we are seeing that percentage grow exponentially, Trenton, to the fact nationwide it is approaching 20%. Trenton, before I let you go, we only have a couple of minutes left in this segment, but I'm interested in your input. There you are in western New York, looking down the eastern seaboard to Charlotte, North Carolina. Your take on what happened in that city yesterday and then last night.
Here's my take, and it's not going to be popular amongst the African Americans. My take is this. I've been driving around this country for years. I've never been stopped because I don't present that stereotype. I don't carry a gun in my car. But I will say this. It's unfortunate what's going on, but I don't want to hear the truth that the left wants me to hear. I figured he had a gun because the cop is not going to get out of his or her car and shoot you. The problem is, though, it's like putting dye in water. It's not. I mean, this is going to be a very, very crucial issue, and Donald Trump might have trouble with this because you see these blacks on TV. They're jumping on cars. I'm thinking, what an idiotic way to express yourself. I understand where they're coming from, though, but I never had those issues, and I'm from the inner city. And I don't live there now, but I understand. Do I have concerns driving? Not one. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here to where this is happening. And here you always find out these African Americans who were shot, most of them are criminals. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But look, I support the police 100%, but something is going on here. And if you had a gun, say it the first time. Don't say it like you said a week from now when the perception's already made. So I'm for the cops 100%. I never experienced it, but it goes a lot deeper. Unfortunately, even when the guy gets shot, the cops aren't looking to shoot us. I haven't been shot yet. Neither have a bunch of African Americans. So, don't listen to the left. It's all a lie. But guess what? It gets votes for the Democrats.
Trenton, we appreciate your input this afternoon from Buffalo, New York. We hope you will call us again. Thank you very much. So, Glenn, we hear from Trenton right there. A very different experience, but the one universality that I hear there that we often dealt with, me as a Republican member of Congress, you as a chief of staff to my colleague Walter Jones, the fact that emotion drives so much politically, especially on the left. You get the last word, about 20 seconds.
Yeah, no question about it. And there are people that they focus group different kinds of initiatives, different kinds of terminologies and sayings to try to move people. And we're in the middle of this election season, and everything's political now, and the stakes are very, very big.
Well, it was a prominent leftist Democrat who's not African American, Rahm Emanuel, now the mayor of Chicago, former member of Congress with me, and then of course chief of staff to Barack Obama, who said never let a crisis go to waste. When we come back, we are going to talk more about the major stories of the day, have more of your calls too. It's America Talks Live. We're back right after this. Welcome back. The terror bombing in New York City Saturday night made all of us stop and think as once again, it appears an Islamic radical used an everyday household appliance. Ed Berliner reports now on the dangerous new application for the pressure cooker.
A pressure cooker is made up of a pot, a lid which fits precisely on the pot with a locking mechanism, a rubber ring that goes between the lid and the pot so that no air can escape.
The pressure cooker has been a staple in kitchens around the world for generations. And when the Boston Marathon bombing occurred in 2013, America didn't really grasp how an appliance was a killing accomplice to terrorists for almost 15 years.
Surely that would have to be the highlight.
That is rather astounding, isn't it?
These are the fireworks everyone saw in Paris as the year 2000 sparked to life. But Al-Qaeda had other ideas. The plan was to silence the bells at the historic Strasbourg Cathedral in France. 4 men arrested just 5 days before that New Year's celebration. And a raid on their home turned up several pressure cookers that would be used as bombs. It was the first time law enforcement came up against this type of weapon. And in the summer of 2010, step-by-step instructions for making bombs such as these went viral in the Al-Qaeda-linked magazine Inspire, the brainchild of Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born terrorist who became the first United States citizen to be taken out by an American drone strike in 2011. What happened in New York and New Jersey is a sobering reminder of exactly how lethal these weapons can be.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow.
That white smoke looks just like what we saw in Boston. How fast were these things moving when they went out of there?
They can travel 1,000, 2,000 feet a second.
A second? That's faster than sound.
Right, they'll move faster than the speed of sound.
How difficult to do, the instructions obviously are out there on if you Google pressure cooker IDs, unfortunately, it's up there.
Making them one of the deadliest and cheapest forms of terrorist murder. JD, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ed. A reminder to you that you can join in on our conversation. Give me a call at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. We will talk about more of the major stories of the day with my guest, my longtime pal from years gone by, former Chief of Staff to Congressman Walter B. Jones, Glen Downs. And Glen, as would be my luck, one of my former constituents is on the phone right now to talk about what's in the news. From Chandler, Arizona, Kathy joins us. Kathy, welcome to America Talks Live.
Hi, JD. You know, I have a very hectic schedule this morning, and I called yesterday and explained why I was going to. They urged me to call you again today.
Good.
I know I only have 2 minutes, so here I go.
Okay.
I've been registered to vote since I moved to Arizona. I moved in April of 2001, and I registered in September as a Republican. I voted in every election since then. And I got this letter in the mail. I must have gotten it on Saturday because I picked up my mail on Friday and I didn't have anything in it. Monday I picked this up and it says that it was mailed on the 9th. According to the public records, you know, and I moved in January last year, changed my address at the post office, and then in February I went through and called and notified everybody that I had to of my new address. I have all of my records.
And does that
They're
include?
telling me I'm not registered at my new address.
All right. Here's the thing. Did you call the Maricopa County Elections Commission?
I did. In February, they sent me the form. I filled it out. In May, I got a early voter ballot for a proposition that we were doing here in Chandler about funding.
Right.
And I filled it out. I did it. Boom, I mailed it in. Okay, so now they tell me, because I called them up and said, you know, I still didn't get my voter registration card. Well, we'll send another one out to you. So now July comes along, and we're getting close to the primary, and I still don't have my voter's registration, the new one with the new address. So I called them up and I said, hey, you know, I want to make sure that I have my voter registration with my new address on it, because I called it in February. I'm getting my ballots. Can you check to make sure? And they said, well, yeah, we have your new address, and we're going to mail out that voter registration card. I said, okay. So they sent me the ballot. I voted. Now I get this letter in the mail, and it says, according to the public records, you no longer reside at the previous address.
All right, here's what I think's going on. Let me cut to the chase with you, Kathy. A lot of people are playing fast and loose, especially when you vote by mail or you do any kind of correspondence like that, my advice to you, since you registered as a Republican, I would call the Maricopa County Republican office, and I would talk to the county chairman. I would also write a letter to Helen Purcell, who is still heading up the election process there in Maricopa County. But I'd make it very clear, and I would call, let's see, I'm not sure, are you in Matt Salmon's district? He's retiring this term. But my advice is that you call Matt's office. Obviously, he's an honest broker. Yes, he's a partisan Republican. His name is not on the ballot. So those are three clear courses of action I would suggest. Glen Downs, when you were chief of staff to my friend Walter Jones, you would get calls like this, I have no doubt, in terms of constituents being concerned. And now in Arizona, and especially in a state like North Carolina, where so much is up for grabs, how concerned are you about people pilfering registrations or just out and out voter fraud?
Well, voter fraud is more prevalent than people want to admit, particularly on the left want to admit, and that's why there's such an outcry against things like voter ID. So I personally have witnessed people voting multiple times and using legal and semi-legal devices. So it's something to be concerned about. And you also have the situation in a political campaign, political season like this, where you could have we didn't hear precisely who sent her that letter, but you could have outside groups trying to suppress Republican votes, or as sometimes people say, they try to efforts to suppress Democratic votes by sending them letters saying you're not eligible to vote, when in fact they really are. So it's very, people need to. I think you gave her some great advice. They need to run these things down and not just take something. You got something in the mail from somebody. Yeah.
Bottom line is you have to remain vigilant in that situation. And obviously, this is a topic of great concern. There are more stories of this that we will follow in the days ahead. For now, Glen Downs, my old pal, thank you for coming in.
My great pleasure. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Hey, tonight on Newsmax Prime at 8 o'clock Eastern, we hope you will be here. Someone else who will be joining us is our good friend Miranda Kahn. Miranda, what are you working on for tonight?
JD, we are keeping busy here in the newsroom. You know, there's been a lot of fear over lone wolf attacks, and it's weighing heavily on the minds of many as disturbing details unfold now about that New York bomb suspect, Ahmad Khan Rahami.
Here is someone who clearly was a problem, but the problem was never defined sufficiently to prevent him from coming back into the United States.
Something happened to him when he went overseas. Because by all accounts, by his girlfriend's account and friends, he became a different person, a very radicalized, very deeply religious person in the Islamic faith, and I believe turned into a terrorist.
And tonight, JD, we're going to talk more about the latest charges facing Rahami, his disturbing past, and what may be preventing people like him from slipping through the cracks. Back to you, JD.
Miranda, we look forward to your report, and obviously there is a lot of second guessing. You will recall last night on Prime when we had former CIA Director Porter Goss and another one of his successors as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra, talking about the signs that were not followed. And my goodness, as we talked about last night, when you have the father of the suspect calling law enforcement saying, quote, "My son is a terrorist," and the FBI, perhaps because of, quote, cultural constraints put out by the new Attorney General, it is a real problem. Miranda, we know you're working it hard for tonight. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and that guest that you mentioned, that former CIA director, I don't want to give it all away, but basically saying what he believes is holding back the FBI. It of course is disturbing. We look at what happened in Orlando at that Pulse nightclub. Very similar circumstances, obviously. The tragedy is very different, but still, people are continuing to ask, why is somebody who's been under the radar then no longer on the radar? And having instances like this happen, where thinking about the comparisons between the Orlando situation and what happened here in New York, here you have two fathers both saying disturbing things about their sons, and nothing's being done. And the question is why? And that's what we're going to try to get to the bottom of tonight.
Miranda, we appreciate it. We look forward to your report, and we know it will be a topic of conversation tonight on Newsmax Prime at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much. Now, you have heard quite the conversation here today, not only about the rioting in Charlotte, where we had the comments of an African-American Trump supporter from Buffalo, New York, and then one of my old constituents calling in from Arizona, talking about possible voter fraud, something going on with their voter registration there. Lots more to talk about. Do you agree or have a different point of view? We'd like to hear from you. 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. The Clinton Foundation may be devoid of Clinton soon, but we will talk with Joe Conason following this break. He's written a new book about Bill Clinton.